Okay, so Rutgers' new athletic director, Keli Zinn, addresses Rutgers Nation today, and here's some of my thoughts. Uh, if you pay attention a little bit, you do a little bit of previewing, and you see what you're getting into with a big hire like this, especially after how we kind of fumbled through the process over the past year or so. But I think Keli lives up to the perception about her and some of the things that have been said about her. My overall impressions, she articulates her vision very well. She speaks well publicly. She is totally at ease with it. By the way, I love the accent. I don't know if that's sort of like it is sort of like a West Virginia mixed with Southern LSU, Louisiana kind of accent. I hope she adapts well to life in the Northeast. We're built a little different. I have some friends from West Virginia that live in North Jersey now, and they tend to be down to earth, straightforward, strong voices, including the women, and they articulate well how they feel about things. And Keli certainly fits that profile. But, I couldn't help but feel and notice as I was watching the press conference that Keli, this is not a bad thing, couldn't help but feel I was watching a business executive in front of a business group leadership conference more than I was watching an athletic director. I'll say this, Keli is no Julie Herman. She has no problem being out front. And she acts and speaks and talks and envisions the way that a business leader or entrepreneur would, not an athletic director. A lot of you out there are probably saying, that's great. We need to get up to speed on the new world of revenue sharing and NIL. There are potential downfalls to that, and I'll get to that in a second. That being said, for those of you that are cheerleading this model, and here's the brilliance of President Tate. We stumbled through this process for a year. He ditches turnkey, and in no time flat, he has his hire. And doesn't get his hire, but he gets someone that has athletic director leadership experience along with revenue generating experience, who's on the forefront of NIL and acquiring revenue. And it took him, a couple days. So for those of you that are cheerleading that business model, you're going to like her. She wants to be aggressive in pursuing funding and the new reality of college athletics. And I know a lot of you out there, especially the younger folks, the OGs like me, we see college athletics as an extension of the university, amateurism. That being said, she understands and articulates the new reality that she knows she has to be aggressive going after, and she uses the language of business. Particularly struck me when she was talking about developing and accruing revenue for the athletic department, but it needs to be aligned with the academics. And, President Tate, addressed Rutgers history, top 15 public university. You get the feeling that they understand we don't want to, and I don't mean this as a negative thing, but we don't want to be the LSU of the South and just be a professional sports franchise for a university. Not that they're really, I've gone through this a bunch of times. We're not there yet. We're not the public liberal arts university we were about the time I was born. I talked about going to games against Bucknell, Lehigh, Cornell, NYU, Columbia as an adolescent. Nonetheless, Keli talked about being aligned with the academic side at Rutgers, hoping that that side, and we know who they are, and I'll get to that in a second, that they see, the academic side sees Rutgers athletics as a value add. You know, those of you, a lot of you out there are probably in business. That's one of the biggest buzzwords, phrases that you use when you talk about bringing value. They see academics, she sees academics as a value add. And there's proof of that. And I said this way back when, writing to, NewJersey.com in between being banned on responding on their forums. But with Professor Dowling, you remember Rutgers 10,000, which was never 10,000. Then they rebranded it Rutgers 1,000. It was never Rutgers 1,000. If it was Rutgers 100, I would have been shocked. Professor Dowling, leader of the English department. What is it with, English department instructors and professors and students? They're very vocal politically, but they were very vocal against spending money on athletics. But what we saw, the evidence was after 2006, our applications to Rutgers skyrocketed. I want to say it was 30%. Was it 50%? It couldn't have been 50%, right? I think it was 30%. But here was the kicker after checking the data. These weren't just random people. These were student athletes. These were people with a higher GPA than the people we were getting. Now, I think Rutgers now, they don't post it on the U.S. News or Forbes or whatever university rankings, but I think our average student admitted freshman is about a B+, which is pretty good. So by athletics doing well, that's a value add for the student athletes, and I've talked about this. I guess maybe to get away from the hustle and bustle of the New York metropolitan area, they'll go in the middle of nowhere if it's Syracuse, Penn State, Virginia Tech, or a liberal arts college somewhere where they're really good at, rowing and lacrosse or soccer. But the takeaway from Keli, she's as advertised. She's upbeat and positive. And like business leaders do, they emphasize finding good people that share the vision, that are aligned. And she talked about being aligned and being aligned with William Tate. And collectively, you pull it all together. I don't remember who it was. I think it was one of the local writers from New Brunswick who asked her about how she's going to lead the department that way. And she's like, oh, we have to collectively pull it together by hiring and finding people that share that vision, and be all on the same page. Now, I'm kind of paraphrasing now. And her approach, I couldn't help but thinking, she's got, and there's been speculation about his influence. I think she's going to get along well with Greg Schiano. They're kind of similar that way. You could see how she wanted to avoid direct criticism. She kind of maybe hesitated a little bit with talking about two issues. She didn't directly confront it, but we know what she was talking about. And she did have Some comments. The one was about facilities, and Richie from the Night Report asked her about that, and that's something I'm very interested in. Rutgers University. Rutgers is a disjointed campus. It's all over the place. You're connected with buses that are always late. It's not easy to move around campus. And Coach Schiano even said, during Schiano 1, he wouldn't take people down to Bush. He wanted to bring them down there and show them down there. But with the new training facility, I haven't been inside yet. I'm there all the time on the outside, and building a cohesive athletic area of the campus, to me, is pretty big. Now, if they rebuild the rack, I guess they would just knock it down and rebuild it there. She actually kind of approached that without directly saying it's an outdated building that needs to be replaced. It was built in the 70s. 70s had some really weird architecture. Kind of worked in our favor. But she talked about how, having those older facilities and the history of it kind of has, it kind of gives you an identity, and it kind of helps you tie yourself to it in that way. But it also sounded like she would not have a problem with updating facilities to a modern facility worthy of top-notch, elite, Power 4 athletic program. Richie and Mike have talked about this. If she was going to tear down the Pete Maravich Center in LSU, which is kind of sacrilegious for you younger guys, if you've never seen Pete Maravich play basketball, just YouTube him. You're not going to believe it. This guy averaged 44 points per game at LSU. So if Keli is willing to do that, as Richie said, the rack, it has some charm. I just hate the way it's designed. I hate how steep the facility is. It's just, it was a typical 70s architecture. Kind of weird, but you kind of like it, and it works some way, but you'd really rather just have a nice facility with that you can navigate easily and have the appropriate bathrooms and the like. But nonetheless, Keli said there's a certain charm to those old buildings with history. And she was talking about the rack. And another subject that was asked about was Rutgers' financial situation. And again, she didn't want to come out and say, hey, it's a mess, it's a clusterfuck. She's like, look, they made an investment, and we appreciate and we benefit some of that investment, but it all has to come back in balance. And they have to do their job and be aggressive with generating revenue to get the financials, to get your arms around the financial and bring everything back into balance. She appreciates the money invested, but I get the sense that being in debt like we are and not having a great athletic program is not something that's going to sit well with her. That being said, I love that she's committed to rebuilding. We like builders. But I found it odd that she didn't really, she said, yeah, I took some time to drive around, but today's my first day inside the facility. And I'm wondering, like, before you took the job, wouldn't you want to like visit your workplace and see everything that you're up against. Maybe President Tate convinced her, hey, come on, this is going to be great. Um, that being said, she understands being in this marketplace, and she talked about how athletes today, they're really focused on their brand. And you can see that with social media and Instagram and TikTok. Everybody's concerned about their brand, even if they don't have a brand. And she feels this marketplace is a good place for that. I don't think it's as important as it used to be years ago. You can market yourself from anywhere today with social media and technology. But there's more to building a brand and success on the field than hobnobbing with rich local guys or alums and getting them to donate money like you do at LSU. I'm going to guess it's a lot easier. And Politi kind of pointed that out in the news conference. He's like, LSU has some advantages Rutgers doesn't. But I appreciate that she understands it intellectually and abstractly. But dealing with that in New York, and we can throw Philly in there as well for the South Jersey market, although, I think Philly might be more amenable to something like that. You're in a marketplace where nobody cares about college athletics. If you win, well, they go, sure. But establishing a following and an identity for Rutgers and college athletics is going to be more difficult, in my view, than getting guys to donate money. At a university with no identity and a state with no college named after it, you're up against it. And it was great today with President Tate when he was asked about what's his vision for Rutgers athletics. He pulled an Al Davis. Just win, baby. And those assembled laughed and, kind of applauded. Just win. However, I will say, we saw with Nick Sirianni when Anthony Ashnault won their national titles. They got a little bit of buzz, got mentions on the news. But after that, there wasn't, much left over. My point is, even winning can't solve an identity crisis and alumni's connection to the university. I talk about this all the time. Rutgers is this massive 55,000, 60,000 student university, whatever it is, and it feels like a commuter campus. We don't have that connection. You're out in Happy Valley, Penn State, middle of nowhere. The town is literally built around the university. That's a university town. Blacksburg, Virginia, university town. Syracuse, a little less so. But you have that connection, that bond. That city is about the university and your connection and relationship to it. Winning, unless we become Michigan, and yes, Ann Arbor is a great college town, where we're elite academically, we're elite with football, we do well in basketball, for the most part, not all the time, for the most part. You're elite in wrestling, and you're good in the Olympic sports. Now we're talking. Because think about it, once in the New York metropolitan area, once those W's turn to L's, they're going to forget about you. Nobody cares. All right, maybe if you're the Knicks. But even the Knicks, you know, all the stars tend to show up when you win. And they sell out. I'm not sure how many of those are from ticket agencies, but it's more, I love that they're talking about W's and not abstract nonsense. And what I like about both William Tate and Keli, and it probably works in their favor, but they come from outside this area. There wasn't that slick kind of northeast, abstract thoughts and speech patterns. In fact, were quite different, down to earth, colloquial, plain talk with hope and vision in their voices. That, frankly, if we can elevate the program, the athletic programs, while also kind of making progress in the world of academic investment, research, I still want to see, with Barchi we integrated the medical school. I want to see something like that for the law school expansion. And working our way up the world of perception and academic rankings, that's a win-win. It's a tall ask for these guys, but I feel that, Jonathan Holloway, Northwestern guy, now he appreciated obviously the academics, but also the athletics. But I'm not sure he was built psychologically and personality-wise the way that William Tate or Keli are. I think these guys are from outside the area, outside New Jersey, that are going to be able to right the ship, stabilize the boat at very least. And then hopefully we can have some success, continue our success of the U.S. News rankings, and get some success on the football field and basketball court, while at the same time, once the revenue sharing jumps in, and if Trump has his way with the executive orders, that has to be shared with the Olympic sports, women's sports, Title IX. Hopefully we can make progress. That's all we can ask now. We know that they said they don't want to just compete. They want to win. Great talking points. You're up against it. You're living in the state with the highest per capita income, depending on the year. This past year, we were number one. Usually it's us, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Our public schools, usually top 5. Past year, number 1. So we have options. People want to get away from the craziness. We don't want to be stuck in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Student athletes tend to want to spread their wings and experience different things and go different places because that's what they're used to doing. They've grown up in an economic and social and geographic environment where they go do stuff. So being able to reel that in, turn it into identity for Rutgers and for the state of New Jersey, and have us be the college athletics program for the New York and Philly. We can't forget about Philly. Pennsylvania's putting in some work now, getting us coaches and athletes. I think that's a bigger task and bigger challenge than people might think from the outside. And Keli talked about this today. When talking to people, she understood that people just don't automatically support Rutgers. It's kind of weird, right? Somebody has to be the flashpoint to bring that all together. And hopefully William Tate and Keli-ZINN can do that. That's my speech. That's my rant for today. Wishing both President Tate and Keli outstanding success. We'll see where this goes. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you the next time.